All right, y'all. So I'm starting to figure something out here, and that's pretty much that if you have an emotional attachment to something, it's gonna dictate how you interact with that something or with that someone, whatever the case may be, whether the attachment be negative or positive. And I'll give you an example. Um, I finally realized that I did have negative emotions that were attached to my ex, my kid's mom. And for a long time, that was just dictating how I perceived her and her actions and, you know, the things she did and said and things like that. And it would just, I was basically just looking at her from a certain lens and not a different lens. So that just, would result in a lot of friction between her and I because basically, she had the same thing going on, looking at me through a certain lens. And, when that's the case, you don't get anywhere like that. And I also realized that instead of just addressing this issue or even being able to address this issue that I'm saying right now, the emotional attachment, um, I was just trying to basically handle the emotions themselves and just like find a better way to deal with it. And I was addressing basically the symptoms and not the actual you know sickness, the problem, or whatever it is. I wasn't actually addressing that. So then when I realized that, I just realized where I had a lot of negative emotions attached to other areas of my life as well. So what happens is, I'm sure you've all seen plenty of videos where they say, oh, you need to be emotionally detached and things like that. And, they talk about detachment and not being attached for nothing. And, it's not really described what that means. And they don't describe, the effects of having an emotional attachment to something or someone, what kind of effects can come out of it. And even if, the attachment is positive, that can it can easily become a negative one, easily. So what has to happen is you have to just find yourself not being emotionally attached to anything. Being emotionally invested and emotionally attached are two different things. You know what I mean? Because when you're emotionally attached, just basically, it, you put yourself through a roller coaster of emotions because, you basically expect things to go a certain way. And like if you're expecting them to go good and they do go good, like, you're happy. And but that happiness, is conditional or whatever based upon that expectation being met. So now when that expectation isn't being met because of your emotional attachment, now you're, in turmoil. As opposed to if you were not emotionally attached, if you were just say emotionally invested only but not attached, it'll probably still hurt but just not as much. And on the other hand, when you have like a negative attachment, you're already looking for things to go wrong. And when they don't go that way and, something good or whatever is happening, you have a hard time believing it and you're just treating it in a negative way because being that this negative expectation isn't being met, you're not used to, the positive side of it, and now you're just resisting it and not believing it, and just, you're it's negative all around. So when it comes down to it, it's not really about emotional control or getting a grip on your emotions. It's just realizing what are you emotionally attached to, and work on removing that attachment in your life, because you'll gain your freedom back that way. Our mind truly has the power to imprison us or to free us. And it is truly just all about how we look at it, because how we look at it interprets how we interact with it. How we interact with it interprets, how we're going to interact with it going forward. So it's not that only because, say, you have a negative attachment to something, that whatever it is you're interacting with, there's always a negative experience that comes out of it. That's only because of your negative attachment to it. Maybe this is not an inherently negative thing in itself. Maybe it's just the way you're perceiving it each and every single time, and the way you're interacting with it, and responding to it and things like that, is what causes you to behave the way you do. And you're keeping yourself in this, loop of whatever it is, of negativity, this cycle of negativity, because you haven't identified that you have an attachment to whatever it is. So do yourself that favor. If there's something in your life that you're like, you feel like you can't work through, and that is just, constantly something bad in your life, figure out if you just have an emotional attachment to it. And once you identify that, it just, allows you to work yourself out of that way of thinking. And hopefully, I'm definitely speaking directly to somebody right now, because, you know, I'm really on a self-development journey, and I just want to, you know, help others along the way as well, because I know I'm not the only one who thinks the things that I think and experiences the things that I experience and things like that. And I know I'm talking to somebody, and I'm just going to keep coming to you with more.